Yeah.
And I don't know if you feel if we could step into that. There must be something about it because I keep seeing the gold and silver door. I don't know if you've ever seen a gold and silver door, but
Well, when it comes to any of this sort of things, the symbolism is personal to individual people, which is why I don't tend often to go into very great detail of the descriptions of what I'm seeing or where I've been or those things, because you have to give room for people to um, unlock their own symbolism and the way in which God speaks to them. There are things in heaven which are absolutes. The throne of God is the throne of God.
mhm.
But even when you encounter God in that throne, different people encounter him in different ways, doing different things. Whenever I go before the throne of God, all I want to do is cast my crowns and get on my face. That's just what I want to do. I want to worship him. When I get to the throne of grace, I want to sit on his lap and receive mercy and receive love and experience. When I go in his garden, I want to just be there and enter into total rest and peace. But everyone has different experiences and encounters, and so if you see a gold and a silver door, okay, there are obviously biblical symbolism to gold in the sense of kingship, and that in terms of silver in terms of redemption and things. There are some general biblical principles, but it's really, what is it for you? I mean, God has taken to me some pretty weird places, and once, I mean, an angel took me to an elevator, and I thought, whoa, I'm going to go up to heaven. And this was sort of just before the time when I first had lots and lots of encounters. So I went in this vision. I'm in this elevator, and it starts going down. Oh,
I heard about that. Yeah.
so it's just like, okay, what's that? So okay, I get the elevator. The elevator door opens, and I look out on this plane, and in front of me there's this massive rainbow. And so I walk over to the rainbow, and I get there, and under the rainbow, under this arch of the rainbow, there's this wall that contained lots and lots of doors in the wall. And I thought, oh, great, wow, this is really good. And I really didn't pay attention. I was just thinking, wow, there's a rainbow, there's lots of doors. What's through these doors? So I looked at one that looked interesting, and they all looked different. So I opened the door and walked in, and it was the most oppressive place because I was walking into hell, and it was like it really,
Rainbow.
really bad. And I mean, I walked in there, and it felt I was so oppressed,
Oh my
and
gosh.
everything closed in, completely closed in over me, and I'm like, get me out of here. And I stepped back out of it and closed the door shut, and the angel's still standing there, probably laughing at my stupidity. But then I looked closely at the rainbow, and it was inverted. All the colors were inverted. Then I looked at all of the doors, and each of them has a hook on it. And I looked more closely and realized that each of those hooks was a behavior or a pattern of sin or a false answer to people's needs. So an invitation to get your needs met in this way or that way, or whatever. So it's like, I'm like, whoa, I need to be more careful about what I'm looking at, and I need to be more wise in thinking that everything that looks good is good, because it wasn't. And so I sort of looked at the angel. He took me back. We went back into the elevator, and we went up. And I thought, oh, am I going to go up, or am I going to go even further up? And it went further up, and I get out of the elevator, and I'm standing before this door, and there's no handle on the door. I'm thinking, well, how can I get in there? So I go closer. I think, well, this time I'm going to really look. I'm not going to miss out or miss something. So I start looking, and I see this keyhole shape, but it's shaped in a heart shape. And the angel looks at me, and he basically, it's like, he didn't speak, but I knew what he was saying. It's like the only way you can get into there is to put your heart in the door. So I'm like, where do I do that? So I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to by faith do it. So I grabbed my hand and I took my heart out and I put it into the shape of the door, and the door opened and I stepped through into heaven. And I stepped into this amazing sense of openness and enormity and expanse. And whereas in the other door it was just this oppressive, this was just, the atmosphere was just awesome to be free, and everything. That was my first encounter with the senses of heaven, because I stepped on the grass and it felt alive, and it felt that it had meaning, and it felt emotional, and there were different emotions. And then there were flowers that I went and smelt the fragrance of the flowers, and when I smelt it, it wasn't a smell, it was an emotion. And this was sort of my first introduction really to the different way heaven functions in terms of senses and colors and fragrances. And at that time I was just, wow, this was amazing. But actually it took my heart to open that door, and that's what God's looking for in all of us. He's looking for our hearts, and where we're willing to surrender, or actually whether we'll go chasing after things that look good and offer quick short-term solutions to our problems and to our situations, and will make us feel good temporarily, but actually will lead to destruction and lead to oppression. Because those people who get in psychic healing and they have stuff done through some of the new age things, although we know the basic truth of those things come from God, but they've been counterfeited. They always leave a deposit of oppression, and will always lead you into darkness in the end of the day, even if it appears really good. I talked to Ian about that, and he was given insight into doing that before he became a Christian, and he could put his hand into people's bodies and remove parts and things like that, but he said there was always left a deposit of darkness, which is the reason the enemy tries to deceive us and pretend and get us into things which look like the truth but aren't the truth. So when it comes to things like doors, we just have to be really open for what is it that God's trying to show me through this encounter, through this experience. Is there something symbolic that it's a gold and a silver door? Is it just, hey, there's two doors I can go through? Is one better than the other? Does God want me to go through two? Some of it you just have to think, what is it I'm being led to? How am I supposed to engage this? My encounters recently with doors have all been on the heights with wisdom, and the doors that are there. I think there's many more. Probably, I've only been engaged with 4 of those doors, and that's all I've seen. But there may well be many more things of doors.
When you said wisdom, that's being highlighted to me.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of feeling like stepping in with wisdom through that.
Yeah, that would be really good. It is, anyone who's functioning in any sort of governmental role needs to pursue wisdom and to encounter her. And Proverbs 8 is a really key passage. I think I'll read it, because it's a passage which has so much depth of meaning in this area. Verse 1, it says, "Does not wisdom call, and understanding lift her voice?" So wisdom is a she. "On the top of the heights, beside the way." So this is something which is at the top of the height, and it's the top of the realm of the kingdom of God, which gives access, and there's the way. Now, what's the way? Well, you could say, well, Jesus is the way, and Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and so it's access to the timeline. Then you've got where the paths meet. Well, what are these paths? And are they meeting in a crossroads? How are they meeting? Is this, past, present, and future? Is it my past? Is it paths that come from the different realms of heaven? So you've got a path coming from the kingdom of God, path coming from the kingdom of heaven, pathways that are coming from different places. Then it says she takes her stand. So this is where wisdom takes her stand. And my very first encounter there, I went there, I didn't see wisdom, but I saw her pillar, which was this pillar of blue light. And I was standing there and I put my hand into the pillar and I was just like, whoa. I can't describe what it was, because it was one of those sort of like, oh, this is too much. But when I've gone back there, it says in verse 3, besides the gates. So there's gates at the opening to the city. So this is the opening to the city of God. So the New Jerusalem, City Zion, Mountain of God, all the same place. So this is the entrance. And then it goes on to at the entrance of the doors. So beside the gates, at the opening to the city, at the entrance of the doors. So there are entrances there to doors, plural. She cries out, to you, O men, I call, and my voice is to the sons of men. And then it goes on, she explains various things there. And then in verse 14, it says, counsel is mine and sound wisdom. I am understanding, power is mine. By me kings reign, and rulers decree justice. By me princes rule, and nobles all who judge rightly. I love those who love me, and those who diligently seek me will find me. And then in chapter 9, verse 1, it says, wisdom has built her house. And we know a house can be a life, it can be a church, it can be a kingdom, mountain of the house of the Lord, which talks about the kingdom. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. So there are 7 pillars of wisdom which are needed in the construction of a life or a house or a church or a ministry or in the kingdom. And she has prepared her food and she has mixed her wine. She has set her table. Well, this sounds very similar to Psalm 23. There's a table set before me, you've anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Very similar things. So wisdom has things prepared for us. It says she has prepared them. Then it says she has sent out her handmaidens. She calls from the top of the heights of the city. So she's calling. Now, she's calling particularly to those called to be kings, princes, nobles, those who bring justice and righteousness, those who bring rulership, which actually is all of us. But until you're in a place of accepting the responsibility of knowing what you're called to, people aren't going to hear the call. And so you have to be, I believe, on the mountain in a high enough place to hear the call that brings you access to greater dimensions of her and of connection to her and access to the doors and the gates and the pathway and everything else. And also associated with this is the wine. She's mixed her wine. Well, within the realm of the mountain of God, there is a wine room. And in the wine room, there are bottles of wine. And each of those bottles is the wisdom of the life of the person who is represented by the wine. And so, the men in white linen, this cloud of witnesses, those who have gone before, there is a record of their life that wisdom wants us to imbibe. Now, it doesn't mean we go in there and we willy-nilly drink all the bottles and get drunk on the wine there. We get drawn, and that's where wisdom will take us to the bottles that we need to drink of that are particularly associated with our life, our ministry, and our mandate, our scroll, whatever it is. And wisdom opens the access for us to engage with the wine that we need to drink. And then we can receive the wisdom of the history of the record of the person that was actually contained within the wine, which is what the wine room is. And so I've engaged particularly with, initially when I first encountered heaven and the men in white linen, with Jacob. And in my first encounter with Jacob, he came to me out of this place of light and appeared in front of me, and I'm like, well, who are you? And he said, I didn't know who it was. I never met him before. He said, well, I'm Jacob. And then he told me to...
it's 9 o'clock.
What did he tell me to do? He told me to go and look at his life story around the open heaven. The Bethel story and the the ladder and the stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm going to read that. What happened? How did he function in this? So he told me to go and read it, and he basically told me to prepare the house for glory. And so that's what I did. I took it. I thought, okay, I'm going to read the story. It really opened up a whole revelatory realm to understand of us being a house of God, heaven being open to us, us having access into the realm of heaven, being a gateway of heaven on earth, being a house of God, all that stuff, and it opened up a deeper realm of understanding and encounter with it, which I encountered, and that was it. But then I thought, okay, is there more? So having read this, I thought, okay, is there more? So how do I encounter him again? So I'd heard Ian talk about the wine room, so I thought, okay, I want to go to the wine room to find out Jacob's wine. So I went and tried to find it and work it out and drink the wine. And while I was on the way, I sort of bumped into Jacob, so it was like really funny. And he's there, and he's got a spade in his hand, and he's digging a hole. So I'm like, well, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm digging a well. So I'm thinking, did Jacob have a well? I know Abraham dug wells. I know Isaac dug wells. I know Isaac undug Moses' wells and sort of cleared them out. So I'm thinking, I can't remember Jacob having a well. So I was thinking, and while I was there talking to him, it's like, okay, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm digging a well. And he wouldn't tell me anything else at that point. It was just, I'm digging a well. So I think, well, there's got to be something in this well that you're digging that's got some relation to what I need to know. So it was like, we just hung out and that was it. So I came back and I thought, okay, Jacob's well. Where's Jacob's well? And I felt God say, you won't find it in the Old Testament. Okay. So I found it. Okay, where's a well in the New Testament? Okay. Oh, Jesus met the Samaritan woman at the well. Well, actually, that was the well of Sychar, which was Jacob's well. Mm-hmm. So Jacob's well was where Jesus met the woman and offered her living water. And that opened up a whole realm of understanding of being a house of God and an open heaven, and how that links to the well spring of water, the fountain that comes from the river of life that's connected to heaven. And it opened up a whole pursuit for me to go and meditate and experience engaging in the river of life. How do you drink the living water? How do you go under the living water? How do you experience the living water? All that stuff came out of, I bumped into Jacob, he's digging a hole, which he tells me is a well. And sometimes that's how these things happen. Jesus talked in parables because he wanted to know whether people were willing to go and dig a bit deeper, find out what he was talking about, pursue him. And some of the symbolism of the things that we encounter and some of the encounters we have, it's like it says in Proverbs, I think, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter or hide it, and it's the glory of kings to go and find it out. Now, God is not concealing it from us to hide it from us. He's concealing it for us so that when we find it, we can go and dig into it and unveil the revelation that's behind it. So a lot of these encounters, they have symbolic meaning that we have to pursue and continue to seek into. What does it mean for me? Maybe different totally from somebody else, but wisdom helps us engage with those that will have insight and will be trading into what we're doing and have a vested interest in our destiny because there's a link to theirs or a fulfillment to theirs. And so I find a lot of this, is intriguing and it's really interesting. And if we're open, then we begin to encounter that. So I think it'll be good for us. Let's step in.
Okay.
And let's actually look to engage with wisdom, and let's see whether we can find those gold and silver doors there, and we can engage with her, and let's see how that works. So
Okay.
let's just close our eyes, and we have an open heaven over us. We can step up into the realm of heaven. There is the open door that is available to us. Jesus is standing in the door, and he takes us by the hand. Now Jesus is going to take us to the heights. So he's going to take us through the dimensions of the realm of heaven to the place at the heights where wisdom takes her stand. So as we are where the heights and where the pathway is and where the engagement is, encourage you that just to look around and look at the paths and look at the atmosphere and the things around where you are. Just begin to feel the difference of the atmosphere there. Now I want you to look at wisdom, her beauty, the serenity that she operates in. Just look, just see, just perceive her, feel her heart for you. She's calling to you. She has been calling to you from the heights, calling you to come in your authority and your kingship, lordship, to engage with her. Just feel the longing and the desire she has to impart who she is, what she carries, because she carries with her access to understanding, access to counsel, access to might, access to all her handmaidens. And you can look into her eyes, and it will take you outside of the realm of your personal experience and open up access to greater and greater dimensions and understanding. Now, wisdom will take you on the path to the doors. gold and the silver doors, and you can step through the door that you're drawn to, that which you feel to step through. Now you have an impartation of something which is deeper than what your conscious experience is, because wisdom has opened up something for you. Now I believe that God will want us to come from that place of receiving and to come before the sea of glass, before the throne of God, and to trade the revelation that wisdom has given, and to come and cast our crowns before him, before his throne, and trade all that we've received for greater dimensions of the Father's heart, the Father's love, the Father's presence. And on the throne is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the express image of him who reigns and releases the sound of heaven, the lion's roar. And I believe he wants to take you into a place of intimacy with him as the lion, that he would take you before him as the lion, and he's going to release to you a deeper connection to him, that you will begin to see from through the eyes of the lion. You will begin to speak with the voice of the lion, that you will begin to release the resonant sound of the lion as you're drawn to him, as you're drawn to that kingly, magnificent Jesus. And I feel he wants you to lie down with him, to feel his heartbeat, to experience something greater and deeper in this place where the lion is connected to you and your call, a place where you can rest in him and in who you are. Just feel the safety and security there is to know that you have the lion with you.
Oh, hey. Thank you.
I just encourage you to just begin to think about and meditate on what has been revealed. And now we can just step out of that place into the garden of our heart, where we take the testimony of our encounter with wisdom, with the doorways, with the throne and the lion, and we can plant those testimonies within the garden of our heart, water them from the river of life, and speak life, so that we can develop our secret place where we can go back in intimacy to re-encounter, to re-experience, becomes the doorway for us, where you can then use that testimony, that place within your own heart. You can release that to others. You can release that testimony to draw those into the places you've been. And as you spend time developing this intimate place, that more will be revealed from the experiences that you've already had. Meditate and rest in that place, so that from the ongoing deeper intimacy and revelation of what you've already encountered, it will direct you and lead you into greater places within the kingdom, so that you rule from that relationship, you rule out of that relationship, you take that relationship into everything you do. And so we can step back into this realm and feel God's sense with us here. So, what happened with you there?
Well, when I walked through the gold door, I saw a lot of people there waiting for me, and and the Lord was telling me it was about me teaching. I guess this probably is down the road ways, but and then when I was in the throne with the lion, I got the sense that he was very much defending me, and also declaring, had to do with, declaring him and just being his mouthpiece. So it was, yeah, it was good. It was hard to come out of it.
Yeah. What I would encourage you to do is to just make sure that you spend the time with God in developing the relational, deeper aspects of the things you've encountered, because you won't be able to contain in your natural mind everything that's been imparted to you when you engage with wisdom. Everything you get from some of these experiences, there's deeper levels and dimensions of it that it's important that you plant them in your garden, and that you go into your garden regularly and meditate around, take the fruit from the tree and take that experience and ask, like the table, that will be some of the food that's prepared for you on the table that's within your own garden. And so wisdom, I've never met wisdom in the garden of my own heart, because she's on the heights. I meet the Father there, I meet Jesus there, the Spirit there, sometimes even the seven spirits I've encountered there, but mostly it's personal with God himself, mostly for me, probably 99.9%. And I sit at his feet and I take from the table that's been prepared. So that's the food which is there for me to go into deeper revelation and dimensions from the things I've already experienced. So I experience new things in the realm of heaven, but I have to get the revelation of it here, and I have to get deeper revelation, and therefore it's got to be outworked in my life. So then I release that out of the garden, like the rivers of living water which begin to flow. So my spirit takes that which I've learned and flows out through soul to my body, and so I create that atmosphere around myself. So you create the atmosphere around you where the lion is with you, your protector, where you speak with the roar of the lion, and you carry his voice, and you speak forth boldly. Because everything has to have an outworking. You know, if it's just an experience that was great but doesn't have a practical outworking, then there's little point to it. So we have to see it coming out through, and then you take the confidence of those experiences and those encounters, and you then exhibit that confidence. You feel differently, you act differently, you speak differently in that realm, because you're speaking with kingly authority. And I believe the lion for you is a key experience and a key thing to pursue, because it's something that you're called to. So yeah, I mean, there you go.
Well, when we were on the heights where wisdom was,
Yeah.
I looked below, and there was a lot of rivers.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something you've seen before, but it's, you know, I take it as the river of God, which, you know, the Holy Spirit. And then when I was with the lion, he gave me a scroll.
Yeah.
And so I took that and planted it, as you said.
Yeah. Good. You know, I mean, some of this stuff, there's no right or wrong, so you just got to go with the flow and what you're sensing, what you're feeling, and just go with it. You know, and you know, if I was to do this, you know, in a normal setting, you know, the whole exercise would probably last a half an hour or more, because you would just, well, you know, you just can't do it in a mentoring session. These are just opens the door for you to go back, you know,
right.
And everyone, it's like who've experienced something, just go back. You know, don't see this as the end of it. This is just the entrance to it, and therefore you have an anchor for the experience and a doorway to greater experience. And as you go back, you will enter into more, because you know, I've been given a key to open these realms, but that only goes so far. And if people are waiting for me the next week or whatever, they've got to. This has got to be a lifestyle that we develop. All I'm doing is giving people an opportunity to encounter something that they then pursue. So pursue wisdom. Go back to the heights. You know, in the garden of your heart, take the food she's prepared for you on the table or the tablecloth. You know, I have a tablecloth in my garden, which is there where I go and I partake of what has been prepared for me, the food that's been prepared for me. And
now, when you eat the food,
yeah,
are you getting impartation or are you getting revelation?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, and because it's prepared for me, associated with what I'm called to do, and I need to take the time to take that food which equips me, because Jesus said, you know, I have food that you know not of. My food is to do the will of the Father who sent me. And so that food will open up the realms of the things that Jesus has called me to do. It will give me deeper insight. It will give me wisdom into those things. And if I do that regularly, what it's showing is my dependence on Him. My dependence on Him to continually draw from Him. You know, like the manna that's in the ark. There are always two things where something in your heart is represented by something in heaven and vice versa, so that you always flesh it out and see it manifested on earth. Because in a sense, there are things we do in heaven, which, you know, in terms of ruling and mountains and kingdoms and stuff like that, which you do in heaven first so that it can be manifested on earth. And some of those may not necessarily be to do with everything which is your personal life. It can be bringing spheres, calling things into being, a larger sphere. But we are responsible for the rivers of living water to flow through us. We're still responsible to outwork the kingdom around our lives, to manifest the kingdom through our lives, and so we have to see it operating. So when you encounter the lion in heaven, and then you take that experience and you meditate it on within your own heart, then you then can outwork that in how you feel about yourself, the confidence, what you do on a daily basis. There should be a ongoing transformatory process that takes place when we engage in these things. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's not something that you find is always in an instant, but you find yourself thinking differently, feeling differently, acting differently as a result of meeting with God, encountering Him, and then continuing to go and feed on those encounters and to meditate on those encounters, to draw from those encounters everything that they contain. You know, when you think of, like, you know, Ian talked about engaging, I think, with one of the seven spirits of God, and he was told to take a blade of grass, and that blade of grass seemed to contain more knowledge of the universe than he could even think of containing. He had to drop it, and I think one of the spirits just laughed and think, you know, oh, you think you know everything. You know, this blade of grass contains more knowledge than everything you've ever assimilated. And so there's a sense where we have to continually look to feed on that. Because when cows eat grass, they don't eat them once. They eat them and they have several stomachs. They ruminate and they regurgitate and they chew again, and they get every bit of resource of life out of that blade. That's how we're called to meditate, to go back, to feed ourselves, to go over it again, to draw more life out of it, to go over it again, to draw more life out of it, to go over it again, to draw more life out of it. I know people, oh, I had this encounter 10 years ago. Oh, great. Well, how did that work out? Well, I don't know. I just had this encounter 10 years ago. Well, that encounter should change our lives, and we need to, for that to go back over it and to draw out of it until we've exhausted all of it, and then we then go on to something new and something fresh, but we take the experience that we've already had with us, you know. And this takes discipline, it takes time, it takes effort. You can't train your senses, and you can't draw out of these things and meditate on them in an instant. Meditation is a process that revolves around thinking, engaging, rethinking, re-engaging, thoughts of God, life of God, drawing from it, so that we experience those things and outwork them. So,
yeah, I like how you ask the question. Like you're going back to the Word, and you're kind of, asking questions and
yeah.
Hammering that out. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, the seven pillars, is that the seven spirits of God in Proverbs 8, I believe?
I think the seven spirits of God are associated with wisdom's handmaidens myself. I think the associated things are that those pillars have to be things that are in our lives, and with, as I said, the house. There were the pillars that were hewn for the house, and so yeah, I think it can be relating to the seven spirits of God. It can also be related to the seven mountains that we have as things that are things of our lives. It can be related to the seven officers of the house, when you have a ministry or a church that has the bench of three and then seven officers that make up the quahal of the house. There's lots of different, I think, things. Again, the number seven, we have to find the significance for us. What does that mean to me? how does God speak to me through that? Okay, look at it and just ask God, well, what does it mean for you? I think some things are definitive and some things are very flexible. And so when I look at that once, I can get a revelation that gives me insight into something. I can look at it again, I can get something fresh and new. And so I try not to tie everything down to total specifics and say, okay, there's probably in ways in which that will represent the seven spirits of God. There are some ways which will represent maybe something else, or how that gets outworked. And maybe it is to do with the mountains sometimes. You know, because those mountains are things which are areas which we're called to have spheres of influence over. We need the seven spirits of God to enable us to position ourselves on those mountains and what we do with them. So it all gets entwined, I think, you know, and, you know, there's such a deep richness in terms of revelation that we just don't ever plumb the depths of it. You know, I can go back to it in 12 months' time and I can find something, wow, I didn't see that the last time I came into this place. Same thing within places, the encounters of heaven. There's so much more. We don't necessarily get it all in one visit. That's why we've got to keep going back, you know.
Now, do you go by yourself often, or do you wait to be with others as you step in? I mean, do you make it a habit to step in by yourself?
I step in always by myself in my own personal life.
Okay.
So, you know, I step in, I go to the garden, I look to engage around the ark, I do all those things in my own personal life. I go with others when it's a bench of three, or when we're working as a council, we're doing different things. You know, we step in, we go to the different courts together. And then in the three, then you get three different perspectives of something, which add to, again, multi-layered revelatory things. Because when we often go, three of us go, we step in, we will always come with a different perspective on the same thing, and it will always complement. It's great, and it's really fascinating that we see different things, and we don't often see ourselves, because we're not looking for ourselves, we're looking for where we are and what God's wanting to do. So we're not focused on ourselves, and we will often have complementary colors or complementary things that get revealed, which is great. You know, it's really, really good experiences. But you learn, and then you learn to, you know, appreciate the things and to get understanding of what the symbolism means. And when we put it together, we get a bigger picture. Because again, that just brings dependence. You know, I'm not independent. You know, in my own personal life, my own personal walk, I have personal access to engage. If I'm operating in a bench of three, we need to submit to one another, and we bring things that add and give impact to what we're seeing, and therefore that presents a picture, a jigsaw that we need the three pieces to come together to form, which often is why you get, you know, the symbols of the lion and the ox and the eagle that represent the different aspects of those heavenly things, that then has to find an alignment, an agreement on earth with the priestly function. And I think we can do that in our own life within the garden by taking the things we get into the realm of heaven and bringing an earthly alignment with our own life so that we begin to outwork it. We can also do that in terms of the bench of three. You have to then bring the apostolic that you're receiving, the blueprints, and then you need engagement with those who are going to say, yes, we agree. And so we form this doorway for this to be opened into the realm of earth, because we find agreement. And that might be with one person, or it could be, okay, with the seven, you know, or with a 12 or whatever, whichever, depends on where you are and what you're engaged in. But it always has to find a earthly agreement, you know. Otherwise there's not a manifestation. Yeah, so yeah.
Now, is there anything, let me know when you have to go. Is there anything that you are currently studying with Ian's teaching that may not be related to the bench of three? Like, is there anything that you've been currently?
No, not really. I've just been pursuing wisdom myself. You know, I've got so much stuff that I've encountered that I've not gone back to yet. I've even had stuff 3 years ago that I encountered in my first heavenly encounters that I've not fully experienced. Because part of what I'm called to do is to help people engage and bring them to a place where they can go on to get their own encounters. So I'm not necessarily, we're not necessarily all called to do the things that Ian does. You know, Ian has, you know, access into different realms in the kingdom of heaven and the realms of heaven because he opens realms up. You know, that's his call. You know, I don't find Ian's teachings necessarily that easy to follow because he's not a teacher.
Jumps all over the place.
You know, he's not a systematic teacher. He's a prophetic releaser of resonance and sound that people get drawn to and stirred by, which is great. And that's if you take it like that, that's what you get from it. Then you go back and you then find the encounters yourself. And so you'd always want someone like Ian to be a year or so ahead of everybody, preparing the way for them to come through. But if people try and jump into the Ian teaching now of the order of Melchizedek and the things he's bringing now, without having done the preliminary stuff of opening the gateways and preparing the life, dealing with familiar spirits and all those things, they will find it incomprehensible, or they won't be able to operate in it anyway, because he's doing this having had 30 years of practice. Now, I think God is accelerating time, and so, you know, what took him 3 years only took me a matter of months, because I took his revelation and by faith applied it and then made it mine. It has to become personal to us, otherwise it's just someone else's teaching. You know, what I'm doing is just my teaching. I can open up a realm for someone to go, I can do that, but it has to become personal for the person who makes it theirs by going back themselves. And so, you know, I'm not really listening to too much other things at the moment because I just haven't got the time. You know, I do a prophetic review come the end of the year and look at what people are saying and look at the different patterns of the prophetic, you know, and I've pulled a few things like that together, just some of the things I feel are similar things that God's doing. You know, you get people like Chuck Pierce and Doug Addison and some of the guys that, you know, Patricia King and people like that who put some stuff out and you can think, okay, yeah, I can see some of this, and you got stuff on the group which people post, and you think, okay, is there a pattern, a theme here? And so I do a sort of a general review of things now and again, just say, okay, is there stuff that God's saying? Is there something I need to pursue? You know, and I just follow my heart, really. You know, I just haven't got the time to listen to hours and hours of things at the moment because I'm actually doing hours and hours of stuff. So, but usually when I go on holiday and things like that, I'll take a whole load of stuff on my iPod or, you know, on my tablet, and I just sit in the sun, or when I'm sort of lounging around doing much, I just listen and take on board stuff like that, you know.
Makes you more hungry.
Yeah, it just open, yeah, you know. But yeah, so that's really where that is. Right, I probably need to
Okay.
go.